Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Small Business Success Talk. I am your host, Christy Smallwood, and I'm very honored this month to be able to bring to you a series of women in business because it is Women's History Month. And I'm, like I've mentioned before, I'm trying new things with the show so that we can bring more interesting things that make you want to keep coming back and listening. Quite frankly, I want to grow the audience, which means please share, subscribe, and share every time you hear a new episode. Please tell your friends and subscribe to the newsletter. If you go to smallbusinesssuccesstalk.biz, then you can subscribe to our newsletter there. And we're going to start sending out notices directly to your email box, your inbox. Oh, look at me dating myself, so that you'll know when new episodes are landing. And in fact, this month we have more than one episode a week, so that you can see the dynamics between the conversation style of the interviews and lessons and learned and just all great things from these women, as well as I have separate spotlights about women throughout history that have been in business. And so I highly encourage you to go check out those episodes. This month is really turning out to be an awesome learning month for me in conversation, and just really, if you've never done podcasting or never interviewed people or never taken on a project like this, I am this is a joy of my life because it does so much for me while I am using my knowledge of how to put this stuff together and create something and put out in the world as a platform for others to be able to use their voice in, have an extra piece of content for their business, as well as all of the good things that come from doing a podcast in business for business. But for me personally, I have learned so much from all of the business owners and the professionals that I talk to about their own adventures, their own adventures. Really, it's their own journey through this business ownership and the professional lives that we have to balance with private lives, and all of the things. So we're diving deeper into what it's like to be a woman in business this month. This episode is no exception. I put a call out to some friends because I was like, oh, I need to make sure I get this episode in. And what this episode is turning out to be is also a little bit done on the generational side, which has been an interesting development for me also. So my friends, these are all friends, just so you know. I know them personally. Charlene Burke with Search by Burke she and I are accountability buddies, and she's the one that makes me get up on a Monday morning by 8 o'clock to have the screen on, ready to go, coffee in hand, and try my best to be coherent. And that's late for her, early for me. And it was the great compromise. We've been doing it for years, and we've watched each other grow and develop our businesses and as women in general. Now, Charlene is a little older than me, so she comes from a different perspective. And then the second interview, so you got three women. We're stacking short interviews. The second is my friend Kristen Frarey, who has a very interesting career path. It has ping ponged a little bit all over the place. She has been working at the chamber for the past handful of years, and so her legacy at the chamber is definitely Chamber Chicks. She and I developed that together and continue to move on, but she has lived in that business ownership world, the nonprofits, how do you make things happen? And she and I are of a different generation as well, straight up Gen X. And what does that look like for us? And while we've not had the generational conversation as part of it, you'll see the different perspectives and point of views. And the third interview is with Shelby Hamilton. And Shelby, I have watched her grow up in her career. So this gives you the idea. So Shelby's the millennial of the bunch, and she is definitely one of the powerhouse professionals that I recognize in our community. She works at an area ad agency called Pro Media, and she is rocking it out. She is fantastic. They all have different perspectives. They all have different experiences, but it's been interesting that there's, some common themes in that. So I want to see if you hear the same common themes that I do on this episode. And without further ado, here is the first one, Charlene Burke. We are with my good friend Charlene Burke with Search by Burke. I swear we've been already laughing for a good 20 minutes so far before we hit
Okay.
the record button. So we got a lot out of our system because, that Charlene was a little extra spicy before we hit the record button. This conversation about women in business, though, is pretty important this month for the show. And I really wanted to be able to talk to you because I know a lot of your background, but my listeners don't. So if you could give me a brief, like I did this, I did this, I did this. So industry, bullet point it, brief background to get you to where you are now. I know that's a lot.
Well, it's only a lot because I was job hopping before it was cool.
Okay.
All right. So please understand that because I went from in office customer service in a manufacturing setting to running that office, which happened to be a direct mail firm. I wrote the first sales letter. I wrote, product descriptions for self-mailers. I sealed deals with licensing and what have you. And I was 21, Um, so we go from that to it was time to move, a variety of reasons, personal reasons. Moved on to different jobs that were primarily in marketing and assistant marketing. I've been assistant director of development for a nonprofit. I've been on boards for small nonprofits. I've been oh geez, what have I done? So in the 90s, when I was in my 30s, I decided that I didn't like what I was doing at all. That was marketing, that was working with people, that was not fun. So I went back to school. First degrees were in business marketing. So I went back to school and got my degrees in electronic engineering and robotic systems. And from there, I hit the field and I was completely male dominated field, and I had the best team ever, ever. These guys had my back. I had their back. I was one of them, and it was great. And I didn't have to change any part of myself to be one of them. Very different from being in a female dominated environment. Very different. Because up until that point, I had been in female dominated and I had to change a lot about me to fit in with them because they're awful to work with. So having said that, I know it's recorded, darn it. Well, I didn't name names.
Oh no,
Anyway.
we can go back to that here. Let's keep going. So you were
um,
in the field.
so I was out in the field, and what I did was literally I had a 100-mile radius that I traveled, but then it would be extended, and I traveled around the country, and I was installing, repairing, maintaining conveyor systems and automated mailing systems. I was in manufacturing environments, banking, newspapers at the time used our systems a lot. Credit card companies used our systems. So the fun part was, earlier we had talked about your persona that you love to cloak yourself with is that of Wonder Woman, right? I felt like Wonder Woman when I would walk in because I was the fixer. People would smile. They're here. You're going to fix it. We're going to get up and running. And of course, there's always the bad side, which is shit, you made it worse. Well, that's why we have a team, and we bring in the team. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I got laid off. So then I became an inside person again. And oh boy, I was I was a design engineer for mixing systems, big oil refineries. And then I was oh, geez, what else happened? What else have I done? This all to bring you up to 2008 when I started my business. And then I went with a manufacturing company and became their inside sales manager. And that was the last job. That was the last job. Being a woman through all that was interesting because it was all different environments, right? They're all different people. But in 2008, I decided I'd had enough. Husband had convinced me that the 20-year ago when I tried to start my own business, it was time to start it. It was time to do it. So I did. And I started a research and competitive intelligence firm. Then the recession hit, pivoted, turned it into an online marketing agency. Um, did that for many years, decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And I've pivoted numerous times. And this month I'm launching an e-commerce venture.
which I love because that fits your personality so much. Because we've talked before, like in our own natural settings, there's, aside from the fact that we're both women, we have different personalities and different, value systems, although you and I are very similar, but how we express ourselves, whether we're introvert, extrovert, ambivert, is that right? Centrovert, whatever, both, best of both worlds. Um, we, we come to these environments differently. And I know that you're definitely that person who's like, I can be without people for days and it won't
Oh
bother
yeah.
me a bit.
Oh
I
yeah.
I need people every once in a while and then I need them to go away. So I'm good. Um, so you did mention, you did, and we recorded it. You mentioned that the women environments were harder to work in because they expected you to be a little different. This is why I brought up our different personalities.
Mhm.
Because what for you, what was the expectation as a woman in the woman environments in a man's industry?
So, mind you, I was in there have been a couple of different positions. One was just as an administrative, right? So I was the second level worker, and a couple were in management. So I was the one in charge. And it was interesting because women as a group in both settings tended to want me to be soft, to couch information in a lot of extra, to be they didn't need me to be nurturing. That I look back now, that's not what they were looking for, but they needed me to care about um all the things they needed to say before we could get to the business. And when I didn't, I had to cut them short, when I had to um you're talking about your kid, you're talking about so and so in the other cubicle, you're talking about need to get this customer taken care of. This is important. Oh, it was, everything was taken very personally, put it that way. Actually had one group, sorry. I have to laugh because it's true. It had a group mutiny. There were four of them that went to my boss to try to get rid of me because I was so awful. He, he brought me in and he said, okay, you just need to tell me how you talk to him. And I told him, he said, well, yeah, that's how I talk to him. I said, yeah, but they don't like you. So he said, I know, but it doesn't matter because we're here to do work. Yeah, I know. Anyway.
Okay. So which which also makes a fair point that because your makeup, who you are, you're
Mhm.
addressing things differently and you
Yeah,
definitely
it's a
have that.
communication style.
It's a communication style.
Yeah.
And with your background and all and who you are and all the things that you've done,
Mhm.
you're, you're very much, let's just get to the point
Oh, yeah.
and get the work done. No fluff in the conversation.
Very little fluff. And it's funny because being around the men, especially that service team, they talk about personal stuff too. Sometimes while we're working, but not while we're determining what needs to be done, troubleshooting, actually determining, oh, you need to tell me something, everything stops. What do you need? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Who's involved? Okay, let's get to work. Now, did I tell you what the wife said last night? It's a very different feel and very different work environment.
Do you think that's because men can compartmentalize?
No, I honestly, I don't know. I'm just saying that that's been my experience. I don't know. I don't know a lot of the biology or psychology behind how men work together versus women working together. I know by observation and behavioral studies of what I've seen in consumer psychology. I mean, even in consumer psychology, we need to speak to women differently. We sell to them differently because they buy differently, you know, than men do. And that's all that's all based on your actions, right? So that's all I can go by. And where I fit best is with people who are similar in communication style to me. They don't have to be just like me though, because I appreciate and need to be around gregarious people and those who want some drama and those who want because some a different kind of energy, you know, because they bring so much. They bring so much to my life. That's
We bring the variety for your
yeah,
smorgasbord, if you will, with
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
So
But working with people, that's, that's kind of the key, right? I get to decide now who I get to work with. Yay.
what did you ever have a moment in your career that you came up where men were involved? Because this is going to be like the obvious conversation around all this. Did you ever feel like you had some sort of challenge that you had to get over because you were a woman? Or did it just never even occur to you that being a woman was an issue anywhere?
The only time being a woman was ever an issue in the workplace, seriously, in all my, working for somebody else was the inevitable, and it happens to every one of us, was the handful of men over the years who thought that they could touch me when they didn't need to be touching me, that they could say things they really didn't need to say. I mean, in the umbrella of sexual harassment, it's at the low. There's one incident that's not at the low level, but at the reasonably low level. And to be honest with you, they know my elbow. They, I took care of it most of the time. Um,
Take
but
care of
the
it.
only what?
It's like you took care of it. That can be different things for different people.
I told you I'm a job hopper. Yeah, sometimes my mouth just it just wouldn't happen. And
Well,
so
I mean, good for
there was one
you.
time it was loud enough that, yeah, it was obvious that I need to leave that job. Because he
Wow.
was in a higher position than me, and I totally embarrassed him. That, oh, well, your fault, putting your hand there. Um, so okay, it's time for me to get a job, time for me to leave. Having said that, um, there's been I'm recalling times when you can't do that because you're a woman, which I thought just that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I've had, and still today I get, they're surprised I know what I know. And it comes out, well, and you're an older woman. How would you know this? And I said, oh, sweetie, I've been building this ship before you were born. What the hell? You know, it's always, it's not, I don't know I don't look at it as it's a male versus female thing. It's people who have their backgrounds, their experiences, and they're coming to me with that, right? So when they say something off the wall or they're surprised because I'm a woman doing this, I just go, well, that's interesting. And there have been instances over the years where I've questioned their background, questioned their upbringing. You don't get out much, do you? You know,
This
because
is why I wanted to include you in these conversations because I know your perspective, the way that you handle those kinds of things are going to be different than a lot of other people I know. And this is why I wanted to include your background, your experience, and all that.
yeah.
If you were to, well, no, what advice would you give somebody else that as a woman in business, what do you think is one of the key things that you would tell them to focus on, to do as
Do your thing. If somebody gets in the way or decides that because they they in some way consider themselves superior to you, yeah, well, you know, happy for you. I know different, but okay. Get the job done and move on. To me, there's a difference between being a woman in business and being the business owner. Because I have the luxury as the business owner, I control my environment completely. If I don't want you in it, you're not going to be. And there's great freedom and great non-stress with that. A woman in business, it being a professional out amongst people, it's always comes down to how important are they really to what I'm going to do, what I want to do, to what I'm doing now. And if they're a vital part of getting something done, then what they think, feel, or believe really doesn't matter. It's time to just get the work done. Because I can let go afterwards, right? Because we did our project together, we did our work, I can move on.
nice? Awesome. Well, Charlene, that was it. Thank you so much for your
Oh, that's
insight.
it.
Yes,
I got all worked up for time with Christy.
that's right. That's right. Because we'll save the spiciness for a whole other episode because that was good and we need to share that somewhere.
You do that to me all the time. You say, gosh, I wish we were recording.
But we didn't. So we'll have to come back to that again.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
All right. Pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, my friend, for showing up on this episode of Small Business Success Talk. I appreciate you tremendously. So, Kristen, give our listeners, because I know a fair amount about your background in the career wise, but give us like your summary of chronological career goings on.
Sure. Oh, goodness. It's a random sampling for sure. Nanny. Okay. Childcare. Moved back to Louisville, floral design. Loved that. Didn't really ever think that that would be one of my career paths, but really enjoyed that. Then a friend said, "We need somebody at the Autism Training Center." I said, "The what?" She said, "We need somebody to coordinate our statewide trainings. We go all over the state. Somebody needs to wrangle all of our trainers. Please come help us." And so I did that, and I did that for about 9 years at the University of Louisville. And then had this little miracle baby, and then thought, I can do anything. So what do they say when you have a major life moment? Don't make any big decisions. I did. So I decided to take a position at the University of Louisville Conference Center at Shelby campus, where they were going to be doing weddings. And I thought, ooh, cool. So in addition to corporate meetings, I did tours for brides, and I wheeled Addie along in her little stroller because it was always after hours. Nobody can meet during the day. If you're getting married, you need to come after work. So Addie kind of spent her first 5 years in a conference center. She entertained the setup workers on a table with a microphone in the big ballroom, and I think they loved it. They told me they did. But yeah, that was her first 5 years. And then, gosh, I was at a nonprofit for military families. Loved that. Made great friends. Really enjoyed that. And then the Chamber of St. Matthews came calling, which I'd wanted to work there forever. I just loved the chamber atmosphere and the friends I've made. And I spent 4 years there. And then life got a little too crazy, and Addie had kind of a long talk with me. It was really a short one. She said, "Mom, I hate your job." And I said, "Oh no, why? Should I love everybody that you work with and I love what you do, but like I need you." Oh. So if you know anything about Kristen Frarey, that was just, I would have stayed there forever. I really needed to figure out, how can I do this thing, take care of the most precious thing I've ever wanted, but still have a career. So you do have to do the balance. I think this is the plight of the working mother forever. You just have to figure out the next best thing. And that's exactly when, it's one of those God winks. The University of Louisville needed somebody at the Family Business Center because the Family Business Center person went on maternity leave. She decided to stay home. That is her journey.
Right.
So I was happy that presented itself. And I thought, Addie is going to school right across the street. We have our morning drives together. I'm off at a reasonable hour. So it clicked. It made sense. This is my new era of life, and I love it. So I get to see my old friends and I get to keep those relationships. But as for Kristen and the future Kristen, like, this is a good place to be right here, right now, while I still have this handful of years in Addie's life to be around,
Well, I mean, technically, your daughter's still very young. You got more than a handful of years, but at this stage of her life, while
Right.
she's living under your roof, yes.
Before she leaves for college in, 4 years. And
Right.
wherever that world may take her, like, these are the guaranteed years. She's like right here, right now in my hands. So
Now,
no,
you
don't wanna mess.
also have a side business,
I do.
which circles back to one of the things that you never thought you would really take to.
No, I have done flowers on the side for everybody and their brother for 20 years. This is something I love. It's something that brings me absolute joy. And, through my involvement in the Women Owned Business Roundtable and the Small Business Owner Roundtable, finally, somebody named Jason Kerner kicked my booty and said, "Will you please just turn this into a regular business?" And I said, "Oh, sure. What the heck? I've been doing it for this long anyway." Um, but I do want to point out, and I remember this often, when I was in first or second grade, I can't remember what the topic was, probably about business. The teacher wrote in huge letters across the big green board, entrepreneur. And I thought, I don't even know how to spell that or say it, but I liked what she was saying. Like, the description of it was like, I like this. I have thought about that so many times in my life and thought, well, there's a reason that a long time ago something kind of clicked in your head that brought you an interest. It took me this many years. What they say, Martha Stewart started her business at 50. Like, I never knew that. Well, guess what? Guess as if
Guess what
life's
year
not
it
busy
is?
enough, I have an LLC. Now, what that will turn out to be is in my hands. I got to sit down and actually do the work and figure it out. But it's a better late than never thing. And what better time than the present? So, yes, Orange Blossom Designs is my company. And you'll start seeing us around just a little bit more together.
I love it. And I know that when you worked at the chamber,
Mhm.
you had access and you were able to soak up all of the stuff from
All of it.
every business owner that walked in the door.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of them in the chamber.
There are. But to tell you the value of a chamber or that group that you rely on, my business plan, if I would have just jumped into it 5 years ago, I couldn't have. It's involving, I wanted to do a drive-through florist. Well, that's a brick and mortar. That's modifying probably a building to have a drive-through, and that's probably not having a regular job.
Yeah, no.
So just through my roundtable experience, like, it doesn't have to be the dream that is hanging around your head. I started thinking, what can I do instead of what I can't do right now? Like, well, what can I do? Well, I love little pop-up flower events. I love handing the joy of handing somebody a little bouquet of flowers and watching their face light up. That's the best thing ever. I mean, I love it. And then maybe there's a hug with it. And I'm like, okay, well, this is totally Kristen Frarey. So it doesn't have to be the gigantic dream in your head right now. It can be the little tiny little dreams in your head, like handing people little bunches of flowers. That's something I can do after work and once a month on a weekend. Like that will fit my life.
You have always been our little rainbows and Skittles person.
I'm happy to be that.
Happy to have you around in my life. So part of what I wanted to talk about is what is it like for you, especially our generation? You and I are that same birth year. What has it been like for you as a woman throughout your career? Especially, you've been in the chamber world, you've been in nonprofits,
Right.
you've been in male dominated stuff, like you've run the gamut.
Mm-hmm.
What's it been like for you as a woman experiencing all this?
Sure. Um, I feel like I have a tiny bit more of a luxury than maybe somebody who went to school for a certain career and you feel like you have to be on that same career path or you're never going to pay off your degree or get to where you want to go. I have learned, I guess, through the years, there's usually a seat for everybody at just about every table, but sometimes we're the ones that need to create that. Spent the first most of my life thinking I didn't really belong in most rooms. But then the more groups that I found, the more people that I found, the more of the support system that I built around me. Like there's so many doors that are around you that you don't know until you do know. And then I think that that's kind of our way to help each other is to keep inviting people to those places, to be in those rooms, to be at those seats and those tables because we need all of our voices. Um, so I think I've through the years become stronger in knowing that I can just walk into a room and there's a place for me there. Sometimes it doesn't feel comfortable. Sometimes our own inner words are telling us that you need to go sit in the hall. You just tell them, shut up. Like everybody else is doing this fresh too. Nobody's been through this world in life before. Like we're all kind of navigating it.
Right.
So
Today is a new day and we've never been this person experiencing this day before.
yes.
Yeah.
So just do it. And if you embarrass yourself, hey, it's a great story for a podcast.
And
Flip it
and
around.
boy, don't I have plenty of those.
Oh, that should be a whole other podcast. We should do that. So yeah, I
You,
think
yeah, your
go ahead.
style is very much the welcoming, inviting, and collaborative. Have you ever experienced a time when it wasn't for you?
Oh, absolutely. Um, in a previous position, we were looking for a new leader, and I was told to leave that to leadership. And I said, I just have to tell you, I know a lot of people in nonprofits. I know a lot of people who can get us somebody that we want. No, that's okay. We don't need, it was the person being replaced who was telling me that they didn't need me to help, which I totally understood in that situation. But yeah, I've been through a couple of things. Absolutely. Now, did I have my ways around the back end? I sure did.
And there's the Kristen I know.
There you go. So yeah, you just have to work it however you need to work it.
So final question. What advice would you give other women who may be thinking about or are already in business? What advice would you give to them?
Um, what would I give them? Find your people. Duh, that's just number one. Find a handful of people who will support you but tell you the truth, encourage you, and really have your best interest at heart. Um, I would also tell them, and I wish somebody told me a million years ago, oh, you've totally got this already. Like, I could think the rest of my life, but the doing is better than the thinking, even if you have to course correct along the way. You just do it. And like I said, these things make great stories. So the people that you surround yourself with can be the ones that kind of encourage you and tell you your own stories back to you, and not the way that your own brain tells them. You know what I mean? They can
Yeah.
kind of give you an honest snapshot of who you are as a person and the difference that you make in the community. So I think it's really, really important to find some people. And if you are not sure who your people are, go to a Christy, go to a Kristen, and we will guide you because
That's
we know
right.
great people.
Absolutely. Kristen, thank you so much for your input on this episode. I
You're
appreciate you
welcome.
tremendously.
I appreciate you so much, Christy Smallwood. Thank you.
Shelby, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. It's going to be fun because for me, you're one of my youngins, as you already called yourself in our group when I did a call out for this, which is going to be fun. But you're also in my industry as part of advertising. So I've watched your career blossom over the years. So give our audience a little bit of background on like what your career has already been so far and where you've landed.
Yeah, so I am a hodgepodge of careers in all honesty. So straight out the gate, when I first graduated college, I worked for the local chamber of commerce in Southern Indiana. I worked as their business resource coordinator for about a year and a half, and then I worked for Pro Media Group as like this Jill of all trades, receptionist, cinema advertising, writer, producer. I even did grip work for our production team for a while. And then I took time off from like my career path to just have jobs. I decided I wanted to build my family. And after I had my second child, right when COVID hit, I was sitting at home and I was bored out of my mind. And I looked at my husband one day. I said, I'm just so sick and tired of having jobs. I'm ready to have a career again. And he said, okay, go for it. What do you want to do? And I called Dan Williamson, our owner at Pro Media Group, and I was like, Dan, I'm ready to come back. And he said, yes, when do you want to start? And since then, I got hired on in 2020 as an account manager, and that's where I've been since then. And I'll tell you what, it has been a journey and it has been a great one. And I think that as a woman, you don't see a whole lot of women nowadays who have a career, take time off, and then just jump right back into it head first.
Yep.
And
Nope.
it's been such an interesting journey for sure.
And so that leads to that whole next question of, so I've talked to some others and we have a little bit of, we're a little bit more seasoned, right? We'll just leave it there. But as far as like that career path and the experience of working and working in a man's world, so to speak,
Mhm.
what, if anything, have you noticed that as a woman in your career fields, in the places that you've went and worked, have you noticed anything because you're a woman, it might be a little different?
Oh, so yes. One thing that I've noticed from position everywhere I've been is that women are expected to be more emotionally involved with everything going on in the office, what's happening with the folks who are walking through the front door. Women really, for the most part, for me, I've seen women are the people on the front lines who they expect you to have that interpersonal communication and that strength of character to really be the forefront of a business,
So
and
when you
it's
say expect, does that mean like there are days that you don't wanna?
oh, girl, let me just tell you, there are days where my social battery is a hard 2%. And we we just go about it. And I think that's the other thing is that especially post COVID, women, I think have a lot more freedom to just be authentic in the, hey, I am happy to do this and I am more than willing to do it, but you've got my social battery at that 2%. So if you want to circle back to this tomorrow, I completely understand. Or we can have this conversation now. Just know that it might be a slightly less filtered conversation.
I do usually tell people whenever it's like that, if it's before 8 a.m. for sure, before 8:30, or
Oh, girl, and you haven't had your coffee? Ooh.
you heard me say I cannot guarantee your safety right now. So just like go talk to somebody else for a few minutes, let this kick in, let me become coherent and nice. Otherwise, you're taking your chances. I don't know what else to tell you.
I know. I've literally had that conversation with clients where someone called me at like 4:45 and they were like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." And I'm like, "I will be honest, I have already clocked out for the day mentally. Can we work on this tomorrow?" And they're like, "Yes, absolutely. Respect. Talk to you then." I'm like, "Thank you. That is all I need."
So that's interesting. That's definitely an interesting perspective on that and an experience, because I'm remembering back in the day, I'm like, oh, I would never have been allowed to have that kind of conversation. There's no way that my boss would have been okay with me going, hey, can we wait till tomorrow on this? Yeah, no, that's not the environment in which I grew up in. Huh. Interesting. Anything else that you've noticed?
Oh gosh, so many things. But no, just saying on that, like my boss has been great. He has this thing where he'll message me at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And when I first started back, I was like, do you expect me to answer you at 9 o'clock at night? And he's like, no, don't you dare. Don't you dare. I'm like, thank you. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. Um, no, I think that women in our industry specifically, like we have to be powerhouses. And it's great to see. I love seeing so many different women that are, the same age as me or more seasoned who just are boss women, and it's so amazing, and we're very authentic nowadays. I feel like, we used to walk into the room and we were the only woman in the room. And it was, to me, it was intimidating. And nowadays, I don't feel like that's quite the way that the world works anymore. Is now there are so many more women who are speaking up and stepping out and being more authentic with who they are and their priorities. And, within the business, just still being that powerhouse, but in a very authentic manner that I think we were, for lack of a better term, masking before.
That's actually a really great term. So I almost don't even know what to ask, because you're of the younger generation. And a lot of you guys, like I get it that even even somebody like me helped pave the way, blah 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 blah. Has there been any times, like what if anything have been any challenges for you as a woman in the workplace?
Mm, goodness. I don't know that it's necessarily because I'm a woman, but I have struggled sometimes with standing up for myself and standing up in situations that, I may actually really feel a certain way about it, but I take the copacetic, politically correct path because it's more so what is ingrained and it's what I've been shown to do. So, yeah, I'd say that's probably my answer to that one.
Okay.
But
Which is also a much softer situation than I've heard some other stories along the way. Which is, congratulations. This is awesome that even like this episode is going to wrap up and it show that there has been growth over the years, like societal, that over time it's been more, first of all, acceptable that women are in career paths in the workplace, owning their own businesses, the whole nine yards. Now you've been around enough women business owners. What do you see as the difference between, have you ever noticed a difference between a woman business owner and a guy?
something that I've noticed is that if there are two business owners in the same room and one is a male and one is a female, it seems like a lot of folks still turn their eyes to the man for for an answer. And in all honesty, it irks me beyond belief.
Yeah, that does still happen. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. And sometimes there are times where, we have so many strong people and entities and, personalities in a room that I would rather just gravitate towards the people that to me I connect with and that I think can support me and I can support them. And sometimes you just don't get that dynamic in a room when you're in a board meeting or when you're out networking. Sometimes you just have still that, oh, okay, this is what I've seen that frustrate me quite a bit. A lot of boards are still a bunch of homeboys, Caucasian, middle-aged to elderly white men. And it is something that I am passionate about changing, because you can't have the same kind of person on your board year in and year out. You do want seasoned professionals, but you also want the younger generation. You want women, you want people of minority ethnicity, because they have a different perspective, they have different passions, different focuses that can ultimately change the way that your company or your nonprofit or whatever it is that you have the board for, it can completely change the way and the outcome that you have for it, because you have that diversity. And I think that women particularly haven't had that opportunity of late, but it is changing, and that I am excited for.
That's fantastic. All right, final question. What would you give other young ladies or even seasoned professionals? What advice would you give them, knowing what you know and based on your experience? What would that be?
Be a mentor, find a mentor. Doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, doesn't matter if you're brand new, still in college, in high school, does not matter. Find a mentor, be a mentor. It is that whole, you climb the mountain, now look behind you and pull the next woman up, because you have so many experiences, no matter how young or how old or seasoned you are. You have those experiences that other people don't. And you can make a difference in folks who have been around the block, and you can make a difference for those who haven't even bought a house on the block yet. And I think that is the biggest thing, is find a mentor, be a mentor.
I love that. Love it. And you were part of a mentor program back in the day, weren't you?
I am. And I have a business mentor now, which is wonderful.
So wait, hold up. No, you were a mentee back in the program.
So I helped coordinate the program. So I was
Yes.
kind of a mentor to the mentors.
Right.
Kind of.
So you have done like both sides of that. Be a mentor, have a mentor.
Yeah.
And I do get calls every so often from young ladies that are like, how do you do it? Like, how do you be you? And I'm like, I want to be like you. And I'm like, no, you want to be like you.
You just want to be the best version of you. And sometimes you think that's other versions of you that include little sprinkles of Wonder Woman and Batgirl and everything else. But yeah, it is. You just want to be the best version of yourself. And I think in order to do that, you consistently and continuously have to change and upgrade, for lack of a better term.
And to
And
get there,
is the way that goes. Yeah.
yep, absolutely. Well, Shelby, thank you so much for your time on this episode. I appreciate you.
Thank you. All the love.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed each of those ladies and their stories and advice that they turn around and give others in business. And I really think that the advice goes for truly, it doesn't matter what gender you are or generation. That advice is great business advice. And one of the things that I noticed through the whole thing is that every generation, it's how to be ourselves authentically. And I know that that is kind of authenticity and being your authentic self and all that's kind of the praise words lately, but it's true. How can you be confident enough to walk in a room and show up as yourself and feel like you belong at the table, even if you have to make the table yourself. Like, there's so many things about the common thread of all three of these conversations that I've really enjoyed. And having the authenticity, one of the things that's going to take is taking time for yourself to get real with yourself about yourself, so that you block out everything that the world's telling you, and you get to determine that. You get to discover more about who you really are, and then you get to design who you want to become. And those are the things that I love to work with people on in my coaching capacity, my strategic guide capacity, if you will. In my real life when I'm not doing this stuff, because this is fun for me, and I love it. And I love bringing you guys great insights and content and people to learn from. And I hope that you spread the word, please, and thank you. And catch us again on the next episode of Small Business Success Talk. I've been your host, Christy Small.